Waves and Words,
Wellen und Worte.
exploring the depths of the human experience.
A journey of reflection and renewal.
Hello, welcome to our podcast Waves and Words, and this time we are going to talk about resilience. Resilience, a quality that is perhaps more vital than ever in our rapidly changing world.
Yeah, that's right, Carolin. The ability to not just weather the storms of life, but to learn and grow from them. And on that note, my family and I we live by an ancient proverb. This too shall pass. And that's all about accepting that difficult times, like the wind, like the weather, will come and go. And so it's about understanding those moments and trying to learn and grow from those moments, no matter how difficult they may be. And so this awareness keeps us balanced in hardship, but then also humble in good times.
I see, and I completely understand. So, has this proverb been like given from your mother or your father to you, or did it come from, I mean, I know your wife is Japanese. Does it come from the
Mm.
Japanese culture?
No, it's there isn't. It's hard to say there's one source. There's like if you look up the proverb, some would say it comes from ancient Persia. Some say it may come from um, another country or another place around the world, but most likely it relates to ancient Persia. So it's just like an old proverb, and yeah, it's just something I can't remember when I came across it. Um, but I thought it was an interesting proverb, and I liked it and kind of adopted it in some way.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I have another question regarding the proverb because
Mm,
it's so you just explained it seems like something like a cultural inheritance. It came somehow to you and to your family, and you adapted it, or you took it
mm.
into your family culture. Do you also have something like personal proverb that you say to yourself when you are faced with a crisis or a challenge?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say I have. I mean, there's many little, phrases or things, but it's hard to say that I invented that or I thought of that. Often than not, a lot of the ideas we come up with have stemmed from somewhere deep in our mind, and we kind of appropriate that it might be ours. But no, I can't say there's one proverb that I follow or one kind of phrase that I follow. But how about yourself? That's an interesting question.
So I was actually, when you've been talking about the proverb, I've been thinking about this, and to my mind came, what would I do in such a situation, or what kind of phrase would pop up in my mind?
Mm,
And the phrase that popped up was, "I am stronger," or "I have enough strength." And I think it's really kind of rather personal than cultural
mm,
because it's built on my experiences.
mm.
So, and that's why I was wondering if you have like something like a personal phrase too, because I know you also had challenges in your life.
Yeah, I think more than just a phrase, it was, I guess for me, it was more of an understanding or thought pattern um, that I'm striving for a different life. So whatever this is, whatever this situation is, it's just a brief moment, whether it was good or bad, on my journey to where I want to go. which was when I was younger, it was to leave the area, live abroad, and just have a kind of successful or comfortable kind of lifestyle, so to speak. So whenever someone said something that was negative or something negative happened to me, I always had that wider picture that my life wasn't summed up in this particular moment or that I had things that I wanted to do. And so this moment would just pass essentially. And I guess that's why that Asian proverb, when I did come across it, did kind of resonate with me because it's all about the temporary nature of all things, both good and bad, and just that reminder that nothing lasts forever, and that all our experiences, whether joyful or painful, they are transient and they will pass. So it's about, it can offer you comfort during a difficult
Mm-hmm.
time, by suggesting, that the hardship will eventually end. But then also in joyous moments, it brings humility, reminding us to appreciate the present without kind of clinging to that kind of fleeting happiness, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I see. Widening the perspective, looking at a bigger picture is, by the way, also kind of an exercise to get out of a crisis and to build resilience. But maybe let's get
Mm.
back to this later. And
Mm.
let's at first have a look at what is resilience.
So, so resilience isn't just, about being immune to difficulties, I would say. It's about how we respond to them. That kind of that inner muscle or that inner thinking that allows us to bounce back, to adapt and keep moving forward, even when things get tough. The definition of resilience in the Cambridge Dictionary is the ability to be happy, successful, and so forth again after something difficult or bad has happened to us.
Okay, it's interesting. So I found in the Oxford Dictionary a definition, and it's the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties,
Mm,
toughness. And the second definition, the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape, elasticity.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So Cambridge have a similar one as well about something being bent or
Mhm.
stretched, but then comes back. Um, So yeah, and there's a good quote. So I guess this week or this session um, on the topic of resilience, I did write a book way back when called Replug You, which you do have a copy of, I believe.
Yeah,
Um,
and I read it.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, so like, I originally wrote this kind of informal pocket guide on mental health and wellness for my children back in 2013. And then in 2020, I created an updated version with some slight edits, which included tips from my children as well during COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, a time when the world felt heavy and uncertain. And I guess it was some way to offer comfort, some clarity, and just a reminder that even in challenging moments, we can find some balance, some light. But there is a quote that I do use um, in the book, and I guess the book draws on from my own experiences and practices that I have used throughout my life that have helped me through certain situations. So whilst I don't describe or go into detail those situations, but I do share exercises of how I've kept kind of busy or flexible or happy or resilient throughout my life up until that point. And there was a quote, not my quote, but from Robert Jordan, who's famously the writer of the Wheel of Time fantasy series books. And his quote is, "The yoke fought the wind and was broken." The willow bent when it must and survived. And this quote kind of really resonates with me because it highlights the adaptive nature of true resilience. It's not about, rigid resistance, but about flexible strength and adaptability are key here in this. And it's a well-known metaphor about resilience and adaptability, and it suggests that while some people, or things may try to resist challenges head on, or which could potentially lead to harm, whether physically or emotionally. Others may find, success in by being flexible and yielding to difficult kind of situations and so forth. So I just thought that was a nice quote when I was writing that book way back in 2013.
Yeah, so the orc was too stiff to get along with the new surroundings, let's say.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, um, is there when we're talking about your book, is there one thing that that is really important to you that you wrote down? Or if you'd like to tell the world, to give one thought to the world from the book, which one would it be?
I would say, let's say that's another good question. I I think for me the chapter, I guess, not just the one word, but the chapter or the question, um, is who am I? And in this chapter, I kind of explore and offer questions as to better understand who you are as an individual, as an individual. So, what what do you care about? What are you doing in life now? Where you come from, not just location, but kind of your cultural roots, your spiritual roots. And if you're into space and science, then your kind of scientific roots, stuff. Are you from the cosmos, the stardust, or whatever that is? And I think by exploring those questions, and then I offer a series of sub questions as well. I think for me, by better understanding who I am, has made me a more resilient person. I'm not easily persuaded by other people's thoughts or actions. I have my own kind of understanding of who I am, where I'm going, what I want to do, what I care about in life, what is important for me. Some things that are non-negotiable when it comes to my morals, or and things like that. And I think when you have a clearer understanding of who you are and where you come from and where you're going as an individual, then for me at least, in my personal experience, I've become much more resilient and less easy to be manipulated or persuaded in certain ways, I guess. So yeah, I think to go back to your question, um, exploring who you are, I think, is a fundamental part of becoming a resilient individual.
So I imagine having a situation in which I was in kind of a crisis. And this was actually, it was a very hard crisis for me. And I imagine having this spark in my mind of who I am. I think it would have made me more resilient in this situation. I mean, I believe I somehow know who I am, what I
Hmm.
am, and what I'm striving for. But I'm in this situation, I believe it would have really helped me. So I believe I can understand that um, it's the most outstanding, not the most outstanding, but it's a very important chapter for you.
Yeah, 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 definitely. Thank you. I mean, resilience, often manifests itself in everyday acts of courage and perseverance. So it's not always those kind of always grand gestures, but often or not, those kind of quiet, the quiet determination to keep going, or to keep persevering and bounce back and carry on with our everyday struggles as well. And going back to when you're talking about, knowing or reminding yourself of your own kind of personal phrase or morals. Um, it just reminded me of the book from Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, where he talks about being the watcher of your mind. Um, and the ability to process and understand your situation thoughts as they are happening at the same time. And that links back to when we were talking about creativity, about metacognition as well, and how your mind works, and noticing when feelings bubble up and so forth. So to build that resilience takes many different things coming together to make you a resilient person, I guess.
I see. Yeah, it's also a strong capacity to have to be able to use metacognition.
Mm,
And I believe you have to be a very self-reflective person as well. It's not always
yes.
easy to be self-reflective.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, you're right. And it's something we teach at university as well. We do a lot of reflective writing, so with assessments and things. So if you were faced with that situation again, what would you do differently? And that's a good understand to have. But then also, once you know what you would do differently or how beneficial that task or situation was for your future growth, then what are the action points? What are the things you're going to do going forward to ensure that when you are in a similar situation again, you will be better prepared and be able to adapt much better in that situation, whether it's dealing with conflict in group work, whether it's learning a new software that you hadn't done before and it caused you great stress. How do you learn from that? How do you build and go forward so that when you do come across a scenario, you're much more prepared, you're much more resilient, and you can deal with that much better. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Um, the aspect that is interesting to me is the aspect of repetition, because, like, you have a situation in which you maybe developed a crisis because you didn't know how to get along with this.
Mm,
And the exercise you just described was like a repetition of this situation, but um, with this thinking model, what would you do differently to make this situation not a crisis or to overcome the situation more easily?
mm,
And I see two aspects. It's like, you have exercise, and the other thing is, as you're not directly in the situation, but you like just imagine it in your head and think about it, you do what you always already mentioned at the beginning of our session. You
mm,
take a wider picture. And obviously, this is like very important to overcome crises and to be more resilient. This
mm.
wider picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you said a key thing there is exploring in your mind a situation or a scenario, um, because you're preparing your mind for it. It's just like if you're doing a martial arts or you're training, you're building muscle memory and things like that. And I think those people that are open to change and in exploring and embracing change tend to be kind of resilient or more resilient people. And even those that, have an open dialogue with the subject of death, for example. It's a taboo subject in many cultures, I guess, many societies. Some people don't want to talk about it. Um, but I remember specifically when my mother passed away, that how out of all my siblings, I was the one that was. best able or prepared to deal with the situation, organize the funeral, etc., etc. And I found that when looking back on it, it was because I was always the kind of one that was always exploring spirituality, open to the concept of death, understanding that it can happen at any moment, any time. I knew, my mum was sick at the time, and the possibility could happen to her, and I explored that mentally as well. What do I need to do if this happens? What do I need to do if that happens? And not in a pessimistic kind of way, but just in a practical, functional way. And then also I was the one that was married and I had kids and I was doing this and that. So I had other people that kind of needed me and I had to function and I had things, priorities and things that I needed to do at the same time. So dealing with that situation and then grieving later is kind of how I was able to go get through that kind of scenario and just kind of exploring what things needed to be done and how they need to be done. I think made me much more resilient during that moment in time as well.
Mm, I totally see. So the book I've been reading about resilience, they say you have like four group of resources, and one is personal competences, and there is also cognitive competence, emotional stability, interpersonal skill, humor. But I think what you just mentioned is this cognitive competence. On the other hand, of course, spiritual competence, but
Mm,
this, what you just described, you have been preparing your mind that this situation could come and what should be done in this situation, what do I need to do? So you didn't fall from one day to the next into a crisis. Oh my God, it happened.
mm,
But your mind was prepared. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
and that really helped me. Whereas another person might not want to even think about the possibility or the negative possibility of a person passing away, or might not even want to be able to think about what needs to be done. But I guess, like I said, because from a young age I was always reading science books, spiritual books, exploring different kind of philosophies and things like that. So I guess I was more grounded and more ready to deal and to deal with the situation when it happened. And some people grieve differently. Some people
Mhm.
break down straight away. Some people it'll come months later, or even years later, when you actually release or you grieve and so forth. So again, even that, if you have a delayed grief, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you or anything like that. So it's just exploring that as well is important.
Yeah, I think it's the emotional system can also adapt to a situation. That means if you have to do stuff, you have to organize things, you have to write letters, inform people, um, and the emotional system can also adapt to this and then let out the grief later,
Mm.
let you go through the grief later. Okay, so actually, I would like, if that's okay for you, go on with the resources.
Hmm.
The book I was reading, it was just a small, very, very little book, Resilience Quickly Explained, but still very interesting. I think it was written by two psychology
Hmm.
professors, and they say you have four groups of resources for resilience, which is, as I already mentioned, this personal competences, a proactive attitude, which means self-responsibility, concepts of belief, acceptance, problem-solving orientation, social resources, family, friends, consultants, coaches, role models,
Mm.
and work-related resources. And I think it's quite interesting because you have, on the one hand, you have like personal competences and proactive attitude, which are two, which is grounded in the person itself. And then you have social resources, like the social surroundings, and also work-related resources. Meaningful work, adequate tasks, flexible organization, material security. So, but it also says that 50% of the resources lie in yourself. And even not just 50%, even more, because it's up to you to build a social network. I
Mm.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's also, when I've been reading this book, they say, so actually it starts with a crisis, and resilience is how do you react to a crisis?
Yeah.
So, not for everyone in us, a crisis is like a big crisis. And for 1/3 of us humans, there are studies that say that 1/3 of humans have natural resilience.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't know if you have heard about this already, but in the book they mention actually two studies in which they found that 1/3 of people are naturally resilient, and the other 2/3 have to work on it, which is also okay. Yeah. So, but what I want to say is that like, if you look at the resources they mention, it's really very much grounded in the person and the personal concept, and you have to have the right attitude
Mm.
and the right mindset to, I don't want to say right, but the tendency to a certain mindset, and that will help you go through crisis more easily.
So yeah, so the coping mechanisms that enable individuals to face adversity with strength and perseverance. And I guess these traits are often developed over time, as you say, through experience, reflection, and intentional effort as well. I think is important to know. Um, so yeah, it's interesting those four resources.
What do you mean by intentional effort?
So just where people are mindful of things that they need to improve upon or they want to adapt or change. So there's often not when we looked at reflective writing or reflective thinking, there's an intentional effort to change something or try something different. So it's not just something you just do unconsciously. There's often not a combination of both intentional things that you intend to do and then things that evolve during any given situation or practice. I guess is what I was trying to say, if that
Okay,
makes sense.
okay. So, and would you say that this intentional effort should only be used when in a crisis, or is it like a basic principle or like a mindset thing?
Um, in a crisis, sometimes it's often difficult to, I think, as you mentioned, to remember certain things or practices or whatever that may be. Um, but I think in this sense, if you think of someone who practices or meditates, there's an intentional effort to consistently or improve their practice or their way of thinking or their ability to respond in any given situation. It's you won't just say, oh, that happened, I'll try and respond differently next time. You have to intentionally improve your ability to respond differently, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So there is some intentional effort involved when it comes to reflection and reflective writing or reflective practice.
Yeah, okay, I see. Yeah. So all comes with the adaptability and the acceptance of a situation.
Mm,
Um, so it seems like, as you already mentioned in your quote, the willow can get along easier with a crisis.
mm. It's not about giving in or giving up. It's about
Mm.
being flexible. And I think going back to reflection or reflective writing or practices, another powerful, I guess, psychological tool is cognitive reframing, so which involves challenging our negative thought patterns that we may have. So, for example, instead of thinking something like, oh, I am a complete failure after a setback, we can learn to reframe it as, okay, this is a setback, and what can I learn from it going forward? And I guess I'm someone who strongly advocates for finding positive outlets to release stress and frustration. And some people you will go to drama classes, some people will exercise, and so forth. For me, when I was younger, it was martial arts and drama. I used to do both actively, and I found that they were both powerful mediums for me growing up to explore and also release emotions as well.
Theater or drama is also a kind of like exercising situations in life.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Resilience is the ability to adapt to a new situation. I mean, of course, the capacity to withstand and to recover quickly from difficulties, but this implies to adapt and to accept changes.
Hmm.
What I found also is that to be resilient and um, to be able to build this, what was it? The effort, the what was the adverb you give it? You gave it this kind of
Intentional
effort,
effort.
the intentional
Intentional
effort.
effort.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like to have this, to be able to build this, you need to have a meaning in your life.
Mm.
And the question is, I mean, how do I find a meaning? Or where do I find a meaning? How did you find a meaning? Do we have a meaning?
Uh, yeah, that's a good question. So again, I go back to when I was writing that Replug You, which is now titled Mental Health and Wellness. Um, for me, it was about understanding who I am, what I want to do in life, and kind of striving towards that. Um, I guess my meaning in life or purpose is I've when I was younger I always wanted to have family, I always wanted to travel, I always wanted to write, and to some extent I have done those things. And I've been blessed enough to be able to do those things. But it's difficult to say what your overall purpose in life. Some people have a very clear vision. They want to become rich or they want to do this and stuff like that. Some are more kind of opaque in the sense that, maybe they want to help stop climate change or whatever it is, and they strive to find a job or their activities relate to that. But another thing I would add, um, in addition to what we're talking about, is grit, and grit often. So you say you sometimes you need a purpose, and that gives you resilience. And again, you do need what I would say is grit, which is the courage and determination to continue um, despite the difficulty that you're facing. So, it's about having passion and perseverance for long-term goals. It's not just about, a talent. It's about having that sustained effort and sticking with things even when they get tough. I think is one point to make. Um, I hope that makes sense. So grit and resilience kind of go hand in hand. If you've come across the concept of grit and so forth, um, I guess the best way to say it is. So resilience and grit are related, but they do have distinct qualities. Grit is the sustained perseverance and passion towards a long-term goal, even when facing challenges. And then resilience, on the other hand, is the ability to bounce back from adversity and adjust to change or misfortune. So grit is about maintaining effort towards a goal, while resilience is about adapting and recovering from difficulties. And I guess that's where that
Um,
intentional effort comes from, that grit to work towards a goal, even if it is difficult.
I'm I totally agree with you. And I also believe that grit and perseverance, knowing why you're doing something and having building from this the strengths to go through critical situations
Yeah.
is crucial.
Yes.
But still, let me come back to this one question.
Mm.
To build grit, I need to know what I'm doing it for, or what I'm doing, why I'm going through a certain situation. So
Yes.
I think maybe you don't always have to have like the big life meaning. Maybe it's just enough to have goal, one big
Mm.
goal. Yeah. But I
Mm.
think this, if you have this, you can have the perseverance because you can be perseverant if you know what is your goal. If I'm a runner and my goal is to run 4 kilometers under, I don't know, 15 minutes or something. Um, I can, if I have, while I'm running, I can have, like, if I'm having a down, I can push myself in my mind and say, no, no, you go, you go, you go, you keep going, you go, you
Mm.
get it, and so on. But for this, I need to have this goal. And
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to jump back to this topic of meaning.
Mm. I agree.
Be-
Yeah.
mm, and so the one hand is to, on the one hand, I think it's important to show, okay, it's really important to have something like a meaning or a goal.
Mm.
But the other question I have, how do you find these?
These goals or meanings.
Yeah, yeah, mostly
Ah.
meaning. Because a goal
Mm.
is something I can, when I hear goal, I hear something like I can set a goal myself. But with meaning, I think it's more difficult because I always wonder, I'm still wondering what's my meaning in life. Because maybe I have I have this concept of that somehow in a spiritual surprise, I'm going to be informed about my meaning. Maybe that's
Mm.
wrong. I don't know, but so it's that's why I'm coming back to this question. How do you find a meaning?
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get what you're saying. When you have a goal, um, it's easy, but once the goal is over, what is next? So you mentioned the runner scenario, and that just popped in my head because I volunteer in Scouts um, and as a coach in track and field athletics. And we have a session on Sunday morning. It's early morning, and sometimes the athletes turn up and they're just like, oh. So why am I here? Why did I drag myself out of bed? And so when I look at them like that, I ask them the question, why are you here? What is it that you want to improve? What is the goal? And they'll say, oh, it's this and this. Okay, so remind yourself every time you step on this track, that is the goal that you're working towards. And this is going to help you get through today's session. So I totally get that, the kind of goal setting. Going back to the meaning, um, again, I would reflect on the chapter in the pocket guide I wrote for my kids on who I am, because you reflect upon your values. So you ask yourself, what are your principles? What principles guide decisions that you make in life? What quality, I guess, do you admire in others or around you? And then, what matters to you beyond achievement and status? I guess are good questions to reflect upon when you're thinking about values. And if you've got your own values or goals, so I'm a person that has always liked um, doing stuff for others or coaching or leading. And I found when I look back on the things that I've done, teaching in Japan, volunteering scouts and athletics, becoming a mentor, now lecturing, doing consultancy, helping other people start up their own businesses and things like that. It's always been in the service to help others. And so I've always seen myself as someone that sits behind other people and supports them from the sidelines or from the shadows or however you may describe that. And I find value and meaning in that, the ability to meet with other people, to help other people grow, whether they're young people at university or whether they're learning a physical skill or whatever it is. But my meaning in life is helping others, and I enjoy doing that. And that's what kind of gives me meaning. It doesn't give me status, it doesn't give me money or value or high money and value, but it gives me a purpose. And I think because my purpose is connected to others, and we are social creatures, and that's how I get my value in life. It's not determined on a particular job or finance or something. And so therefore, I guess there's always an opportunity to explore my meaning in depth, I guess. But I think that question has so many different different multi layers to it, doesn't it? You've got
Yeah,
your own
maybe we should.
values.
Yeah, maybe we should make an extra session about this.
Yeah, I think that's a whole session
Mm.
in itself, definitely. That's a very good question.
In this book I read about resilience. They give 4 ways to find a meaning,
Mm,
and so I'm just mentioning this because they wrote it just as an example, but I don't know if it's enough or if it's true or if it fits for everybody.
mm,
But they say you can find a sense in the service of something meaningful and the service of human beings,
mm,
spiritual experience, and this is inspired by a Holocaust survivor in a
mm,
situation where you have no way out, when you can't change anything. You have to rise above yourself and turn a tragedy into a triumph.
mm.
So this total turnaround of a
Yeah,
helpless situation.
that's all about accepting uncertainty, um, and embracing growth through adversity, I guess. I mean, in that situation, that's a very uh, strong, terrible scenario situation that had occurred. Um, But I guess, yeah, if you accept that you can't change a situation, then you kind of your mindset shifts, like you said, like you just said, and then when your mind set shifts, then you start to embrace the growth that comes from that adversity that you are experiencing. And that can happen on a very little thing in a conflict in a relationship or something happening at work or something like that. That mindset shift is so important, but obviously very difficult depending on the situation that you're faced within.
Mm, yeah, but again, it's like what we have been working out earlier. It's
Mm,
this thing that you have to adapt and accept a new situation.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's that adaptability is key, isn't it?
yeah. Do you have some exercises?
Um, to bounce back to deal with
Yeah,
I guess what we've essentially what we've been um kind of talking about so far on in this session is a good one that was mentioned is reflection or reflective writing. I
yeah,
think the more we do that, the more we become resilient. Um, the more we accept uncertainty and embrace new challenges and open up to new opportunities and experience, the more adaptable we become as individuals as well. And I think having that intentional reflection and growth is important, but then also opening yourself up to new opportunities, new experiences, putting yourself in situations that perhaps are uncomfortable to you, not dangerous to you, or that will put you in harm, but some things that you would never normally do. And that might be as something as simple as going on a roller coaster ride at a theme park that you've
hmm,
always dreaded, you've always been scared of, you've never wanted to do it, and so you've shied away from it. If you can get past that mindset where you turn away from possible experiences and challenges, and learn to try and embrace those things, I think that starts to build up your resilience. And I think we spoke before about journaling as well. Some people
yeah,
do
yeah,
reflection through journaling. I think that is a brilliant way of developing resilience over time, just because you're constantly reflecting on what you did on that day and so forth as well.
yeah. I have also, I would like to add another one, and this is when you're in a situation in which you feel helpless,
Mm,
try to remember situations that you have been solving earlier. Try to remember hard situations in your life you have
yeah.
encountered before, and how did you get out of it?
Mm.
Um, yeah.
And I agree, and I think it goes back to what you was talking about the resources as well. I think
Mhm.
that's super important. You've got your personal resources where you're developing your own resilience. You can do meditation, you could do drama improvisation, you can take up a sport, martial arts, you can embrace change and so forth, become comfortable with the concept of illness and death, etc. But then you talked about the other resources, so having that social network, where you can talk to people, get advice from other people, have honest and open conversations. All of that builds resilience and builds grit because when you're going through a difficult situation, if you can depend on others as well, I think that's important. It's important to be self-resilient and reliant,
Mhm.
but being open to and depending on others is also an important resilient trait to have as well, something to build up. So having that kind of network and so forth. Yeah, so I think that's important as well, that kind of social network, personal development, environmental resources, work, etc., etc. All these things are super important. They all come together to develop and build your overall resilience as well.
Yeah. So, would you like to add something more? Because I think I'm like, we already mentioned so much. I think this should somehow settle down now a little bit.
Mm.
I don't know if you have to add more that you want to say about resilience.
Resilience isn't a fixed trait, it's a dynamic process of learning and growth. So again, I encourage people to reflect on challenges they might be facing or have faced and consider how they could apply the things we've spoke about in this session, in this podcast to, cultivate inner resilience and in strength. And, most importantly, start embracing change. Uh, the proverb I mentioned, this too shall pass. But I think most importantly, we've got to learn to laugh as much as possible. And laughter is a good stress reliever. It's been scientifically proven. There's reports. that come out recently, documenting this. The more we laugh, the more we engage in laughing, has a very positive effect on our kind of mental health and stability.
It's nice to know, but I imagine there are people who are in a crisis for whom it might be very hard to even think about laughing, you
Yeah,
know. But yeah, but we can still try and yeah, and
yeah. Even fake laugh works apparently. It's because
okay.
it's not just a mental response, it's a physical response when you the do not quote me on this, but it has something to do with the muscles in your chest when you're ha ha ha. Even that releases a certain muscle, and that then has that effect.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's also so I know about this effect that
Mm,
if you move the muscles that you use for laughing and for smiling, this changes your mind, your mood.
mm,
So there is an effect. So you can have like a funny um, thought,
yeah,
and your muscles will start to laugh and smile. But you can it also works other way around. You can just smile, laugh, and this will make your mind brighter. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah, I like that. I agree, definitely.
Thank you very much for listening today. Resilience is really one of our main resources as human beings if we want to continue walking through this complex world. And we hope we gave you some little sparks that you can work with. And we wish you a good day and a good time. Take care.
Great. Thank you for listening, everyone. And as Carolyn said, take care. And we look forward to our next podcast.